Hello everyone, and just in case you're wondering, I will not be blundering the sound this video, since all of you are commenting on me blundering the sound all the time. I was really careful not to do it this time. And someone said in the comments that I should use my favorite snacks to, reward myself every time I don't blunder a sound. And then I thought, yeah, that'd be really a good idea. But then I'm constantly thinking about the snacks, and I'm probably not ever gonna blunder the sound anymore. But we'll see. You never know. So this is another interesting game from round 11 of the 2013 Candidates Tournament. It's Vladimir Kramnik versus Teimour Radjabov. And before we check out the game, we do have a couple of photos, two to be exact. Here is a nice close-up of Vladimir Kramnik. Nothing out of the ordinary with this photo. And here we have a photo. A couple of moves from the opening were played. Kramnik only playing with pawns so far. A very interesting variation, as you'll see in the game. So let's see the game, and the quote above the board sums this game up pretty nicely, but there is a lot of poison to it, as you'll see. So Kramnik has the white pieces, and he opens with d4. We have knight to f6, c4, g6, and g3, c5, knight to f3, and bishop to g7. So we have the King's Indian defense, something called the pterodactyl defense. Bishop to g2, c captures on d4, knight captures on d4, and Radjabov castles. Knight to c3, queen to c7, now attacking the c4 pawn, and b3 now. An interesting variation Kramnik prepared. Again, Kramnik says that, as usual, you can check out the interview about this game after you watch the video. There will be a link in the description below, as usual. The standard idea is knight to d5, actually, where black can't really capture on c4 because now white is attacking the e7 pawn, and the exchange in the center will definitely favor white. After knight captures, then c pawn becomes a d pawn, and a d pawn is always better than a c pawn most of the times. So after queen to c7, b3, a nice prepared line by Vladimir Kramnik. We have d5, knight d to b5, attacking the queen, queen to a5, pinning the c3 knight, and bishop to d2. You don't want to allow any weird discoveries here, so first d captures on c4. Knight to d5, knight to e5 doesn't really work now because when the c4 pawn was captured, the b5 knight is no longer defended, so no tactics are possible here. So first b captures on c4. Now some nasty discoveries are definitely possible. So Radjabov brings back the queen. Queen to d8. We have castles and a6 now. Knight to a3, and there are a lot of the knight is on the rim. Of course, you never want to have that, but there are some nice ideas about this knight in the future. The knight can come into the game back via c2 and then e3, or maybe white can even push this c pawn, play knight c4, and then maybe create an outpost for this knight on b6 after bishop to e3 is played. So definitely not a useless knight. Bishop to f5. As the bishop now came to f5, now knight c2 to e3 is definitely a more preferred option. This knight will be attacking the bishop. So knight to c2, we have knight to c6, and knight to e3. And here, what do you do here? Your bishop is under attack. Do you move the bishop? Do you defend the bishop? Do you want to give up the bishop pair? Should you give up the bishop pair? The engine actually prefers queen to d4 here. Simply attacking the c4 pawn, and the engine doesn't care about ruining the pawn structure here and opening up the king side, as there's really no way for white to take advantage of this. But if you're not prepared, Kramnik is prepared. Kramnik is playing this game without wasting any time. You don't want to allow something like this. So Radjabov goes for queen to d7. We have knight captures on f5, queen captures on f5. Now the structure is, solid, nothing is ruined, and rook to b1. Here Kramnik attacks the b7 pawn. Rook a to d8. Now, a very nice idea. The bishop is pinned, of course. You can't move the bishop because you lose the queen. So can you capture the b7 pawn? You can capture it, but it doesn't really give you all that much. If you play rook captures on b7, then you get knight to a5. The rook is under attack. The knight is also attacking the c4 pawn, and you definitely don't want to allow knight captures on c4. Then the knight and the rook will be attacking the bishop. So after rook defends, then you have to worry about ideas like queen to c5, attacking the rook, and now with a double attack on the c4 pawn. And now you have to find a move for white that is knight to d5. and now it's a very nice idea. After knight captures on c4, queen to c2 pins the knight, and after knight captures, rook captures on c4. It will be a better position for white, as the bishop pair will have an easier game. But you know, such complications are, you don't want to calculate something like this. You'll easily miss it, and it's a very long variation, and Kramnik isn't interested. He first plays queen to c1, and only now, if Radjabov allows it, he will capture. First we have queen to e6, so maybe giving up the b7 pawn for the c4 pawn, and kind of not allowing this knight to move, as the knight has to protect the e2 pawn. Knight to d5 would be a very nice idea for white, but then the e2 pawn will fall. So first Kramnik plays rook to e1, defends the e2 pawn, and now we have queen captures on c4. Rook captures on b7, finally Kramnik grabs that pawn. Knight to e5, and here we have bishop to f4. Kramnik isn't interested in capturing the e7 pawn. It's a pawn sacrificed by Radjabov. It's hard to say after rook captures. Hard to say what his idea was. Probably to simply activate all of his pieces after rook captures, but it's hard to say if this is compensation enough for a pawn. In a practical game, probably yes. It's a strong bishop on g7, and the rook and queen are placed very nicely. The knights are very active, so in a practical game, probably, as Kramnik decided not to capture the e7 pawn. So after knight to e5, we have bishop to f4. Queen back to e6, now defending the e7 pawn. We have h3. g4 is a very important square to guard, as both knights are eyeing that square. We have knight to c4, and now comes e4. Knight back to e5, bishop captures on e5, queen captures on e5, and now knight to d5. You could go for knight captures, but after knight captures, pawn captures, that's really nothing for black here. You have to move the queen. Both of the rooks are attacking now the e7 pawn, so nothing for you there. So after knight d5, a rook to e8, at defending the e7 pawn. Knight to b4 now, attacking the a6 pawn. We have rook to d7, offering a trade of rooks. Knight to c6 now, attacking the queen. Queen to e6, and rook to b6 now by Kramnik. And this is a very interesting moment in the game. You know, not a lot of discoveries are possible at the moment because the rook on b6 is undefended, but you know, the rook is x-raying that queen on e6 and also attacking the pawn on a6. So what do you do here? Here Radjabov missed a very nice opportunity to go for rook to c7, pinning that knight as the queen is on c1. And here you have to give up the pawn. Rook captures on a6, and then knight to d7. Go for knight to b8 to pile up on this pinned c6 knight, which is kind of interesting because this knight is preventing this rook from capturing this queen and this rook from capturing this queen. So it's a very complicated position. But after e5, now the bishop is also protecting the knight. Knight captures on e5 and queen to d1, now unpinning. The knight still cannot capture here because now this knight is pinned from this rook. Rook e to c8, doubling up on this knight, and now this was the idea you had to see, that black was now completely fine, that f4 is not possible because of queen to c4, attacking the undefended rook on a6. And after knight to e7, attacking the rook on c8, queen captures, knight captures, knight to c6 now, getting the knight away from e5, bishop captures, queen captures. Now the knight is attacked. Now comes knight captures on e7. Rook captures on e7, and now you have to see that if you capture with the rook, then queen c5 check will win back the rook. So after queen to d8 check, bishop to f8, now comes rook captures. And now, of course, queen to c5, king moves and queen captures, and black will be up a piece. So a very nice idea, this rook to c7 move here after rook to b6. Rook to c7, definitely playable for black, but Radjabov was very low on time. He was struggling with Kramnik's prepared variation, and perhaps he did not want to invest time in calculating rook to c7. So instead he played rook captures on the queen captures on a2. If you can grab a pawn and there's nothing wrong with it, you definitely should. But unfortunately for Radjabov, there is something wrong with it. Here e5 was played. Now the knight of course is under attack. We have knight to d5 and try to find the idea here. What was Kramnik's idea in this position? So feel free to pause the video and you know, punish Radjabov for his insolence on grabbing the a2 pawn. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are an excellent punisher. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, here Kramnik played rook to b2. And now it's very interesting. What do you do with the queen? There are not a lot of squares you can go to. A5 is covered by the queen. The only square available to the queen is queen to a4, which was played in the game. You have to see that moves like queen to a3 don't work for a very specific idea. The idea queen a3 doesn't work, and that this is something you had to see if you actually found Kramnik's rook to b2, that now rook to b8 will win you the game. Now, of course, your queen is under attack and the rook on e8 is under attack. If black captures rook, then you lose the queen. And if queen captures, first you will capture the rook with check, and after bishop blocks, only then will you recapture the queen, and you will be up a whole rook. So after rook to b2, you have to go queen to a4, and now comes bishop captures on d5. Rook captures on d5, and now comes rook to b4, once again attacking the queen. Again, the only square available for the queen is a2, and now comes the move you also had to see. I really hope you were able to do this. Knight captures on e7 with check. And now it's a very nice fork. The king is under attack. Also, the rook on d5 will fall. If you capture, then comes queen to c8. You have to block this, and now comes rook to b8. And there's really no defense against queen captures on f8. This is game over. So after this, knight to e7 check, king to h8 was played, and now comes knight captures on d5. We have queen captures, and now the immediate queen to c4. Kramnik just won the exchange, and without any further ado, he wants to exchange queens and win the game. Queen captures on c4. There really isn't a better move here for Radjabov, and he still didn't reach time control. 5 more moves until time control. Rook captures on c4, and bishop captures on e5. So for the exchange, Radjabov is up a pawn, but not for long. Here Kramnik played king to f1, and it was in this position that Teimour Radjabov resigned the game. Why did he resign? Rook to e4 immediately was also possible, but Kramnik first wants his king on a nice light square, as Radjabov does have a dark square bishop, so there are, you know, no mistakes even possible to make. He resigned because now, of course, f4 is a terrible threat. You will either lose the bishop or the rook, and after something like rook to e6, f4, you move, simply exchange rooks, and then you will start gobbling up those pawns, and of course a rook will always beat a bishop most of the times. So yeah, after this, like we've said, king to f1 move, Radjabov resigned the game, and a very nice and a very important victory for Vladimir Kramnik in this tournament. So before I forget, we should definitely check out the standings after round 11. This is the last game we'll be showing from round 11. So these are the standings. Carlsen in clear first with 7.5. Kramnik now climbed all the way to second place with 7 points. Then Aronian 6.5. Svidler 5.5. We have Gelfand with 5. Tied with Grischuk also with 5. Vassily Ivanchuk with 4. And in last place after losing this game to Kramnik, it's Teimour Radjabov with 3.5 points. So that's the game and the entire round 11. I do hope you enjoyed it. All the photos and a nice article by Peter Svidler will also be in the, there will be a link in the description below, so feel free to check that out. I really do recommend it. And I would like to thank Mateusz Winnicki, Stuart Clegg, Luke Ringland, Gregory Quinn, David Marwell, and Miki Gramatikov, and of course Leon Fodulian for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. So yeah, I will probably only post one video today and only one video tomorrow, and probably only one video on Saturday, as I will not be in Croatia for the next 3 days. I'm visiting Bosnia, so I will try to make a couple of videos and you know, just publish them one each day, so you do have something to watch. But if I miss something, I will definitely let you know in advance. So yeah, once again, thank you all, and I do believe I said it. Maybe I haven't. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. So yeah, thank you all, and I will see you soon.